Atul Subhash was a young man with big dreams. He was full of life, always wearing a smile that could light up a room. Friends and family remember him as someone who was always ready to lend a helping hand, a person who had a bright future ahead of him. He was a software engineer from Bangalore, a bustling city known as the Silicon Valley of India. Atul had worked hard to get where he was, earning a degree in computer science and landing a job at a reputable tech firm. He had his whole life ahead of him, filled with aspirations and goals he was eager to achieve. But on December 9th, 2024, Atul took his own life. The news of his sudden and tragic death sent shockwaves through his community. Friends, family and colleagues were left in disbelief, struggling to understand why someone so full of potential would make such a heartbreaking decision. He was only 34 years old. At an age when many are just beginning to settle into their careers and personal lives, Atul's life was cut short. His untimely death left a void that could never be filled. His death shocked everyone in India and started a big discussion about men's rights in the legal system. Atul didn't die quietly. His passing ignited a nationwide conversation about the pressures and challenges faced by men in modern society, particularly in the context of legal and social expectations. He left a 24-page suicide note and an 81-minute video. These were not just farewell messages, they were detailed accounts of his struggles, his pain, and the injustices he felt he had endured. They provided a window into the torment that had plagued him in his final days. Both told a very sad story of harassment, people trying to take his money, and deep sadness. Atul described the relentless harassment he faced, the financial exploitation, and the overwhelming sense of despair that ultimately led him to take his own life. This wasn't just a sad story for Atul. It showed how the system failed him. His detailed accounts highlighted the flaws and biases in the legal system, which he felt had been manipulated against him, leaving him with no recourse or support. Atul's story reminds us that many men suffer silently behind closed doors. They endure immense pressure and emotional pain, often without the support or understanding they desperately need. His story is a stark reminder of the hidden struggles that many men face. They are victims of a system that often seems unfair to them. The societal and legal structures in place can sometimes exacerbate their suffering, leaving them feeling isolated and helpless. His case is a wake-up call. It urges us to re-examine the systems and structures that govern our lives and to advocate for changes that can provide better support and fairness for everyone, regardless of gender. We need to listen to those asking for help and demand change. Atul's story is a powerful reminder that we must be vigilant and compassionate, ensuring that no one feels so alone and desperate that they see no other way out. Atul's suicide note made serious accusations against his wife, Nikita Singhania, and her family. The note was a cry for help, detailing the torment he endured over the years. He said they abused him emotionally and financially for years. The emotional abuse was relentless, with constant arguments and belittling remarks that chipped away at his self-esteem. Atul said his in-laws treated him like a cash machine. They saw him as nothing more than a source of money, exploiting his hard-earned income for their own gain. They first asked for a small amount of money, 5 lakh rupees. This initial demand seemed manageable, but it was just the beginning of a series of escalating financial pressures. But they wanted more and more. Each time he gave in to their demands, they would come back with even larger requests, never satisfied with what they received. Soon they were pressuring him for 50 lakh rupees. The financial strain became unbearable, pushing Atul to the brink of despair. The harassment wasn't just about money. Atul's note revealed that the abuse extended beyond financial exploitation. Atul said his wife wouldn't be close to him and asked him to do humiliating things. She distanced herself emotionally and physically, making him feel isolated and unloved. He was constantly put down and criticized, even for simple things around the house. No matter what he did, it was never good enough, and he was made to feel worthless. He felt like a prisoner in his own home. The place that should have been his sanctuary became a cage, trapping him in a cycle of abuse and despair. Atul's story is a scary example of how a marriage can become toxic. What started as a loving relationship turned into a nightmare. filled with manipulation and control. It shows how hidden domestic abuse can be, especially against men. Men often suffer in silence, afraid to speak out due to societal expectations and stigma. This kind of abuse often goes unreported and unpunished. Atul's tragic end highlights the urgent need for awareness and support for all victims of domestic abuse, regardless of gender. Atul was desperate for help, so he went to court. He hoped for justice, but instead found himself trapped in a legal mess. For over 2 years, he went to court 120 times. He had to travel constantly from Bangalore to Jaunpur, where his wife's family had filed many cases against him. The charges were serious: dowry harassment, violence, unnatural sex, even the murder of his father-in-law. Atul said he was innocent. He believed the cases were made up to get money from him and punish him. The legal system, which should have protected him, became his tormentor. Atul felt completely helpless. He was trapped in a system that seemed not to care about his suffering. Atul's story shows a bigger problem. It's not just about one man or one family, it's about a systemic issue that affects countless men across the country. It shows the flaws in the Indian legal system, especially when it comes to men's rights. The system designed to protect sometimes ends up being a tool for harassment and injustice. His case has made people worry about the misuse of laws like Section 498A of the IPC. This law, intended to protect women from dowry harassment, has often been misused, leading to false accusations and wrongful arrests. This law, meant to protect women from dowry harassment, is often used as a weapon against men and their families. Families are torn apart, reputations are ruined, and lives are destroyed. Atul's suicide note is a desperate cry for change. It highlights the extreme measures some men feel forced to take when they believe there is no other way out. He spoke out against a system he felt was biased against men. His voice, though silenced, has sparked a movement, urging others to speak up and demand justice. He believed no one listened to him or cared about his pain. This sense of isolation and helplessness is a common experience for many men facing similar situations. His death reminds us that men can also be victims of domestic abuse and legal harassment. It's a stark reminder that abuse knows no gender, and the legal system must reflect this reality. Atul's case has started a national conversation. People are beginning to question the fairness of the laws and the way they are implemented. It's time to address the gender bias in our legal system. We need to ensure that justice is truly blind and that all individuals, regardless of gender, are treated fairly. We need to make sure laws are fair and protect all victims of abuse, no matter their gender. Only then can we hope to create a just and equitable society for everyone. Now, Atul's suicide note and video are hard to watch and impossible to forget. They are raw, honest, and truly heartbreaking. We see a man's pain clearly. He carefully documented his ordeal. He wanted the world to know the truth. His words are full of despair, but also a father's love. He wrote to his young son, explaining his actions. He wanted justice. Justice is due, he wrote over and over. His final message was powerful and affected everyone deeply. Atul's words remind us of the human cost of injustice. They are a call for a fairer and more just society. Atul's death made a lot of people angry. They protested and demanded justice. The police acted quickly. They arrested Nikita Singhania, her mother and her brother. The investigation is still going on. We are waiting to see if Atul's accusations will be proven, but his death has already started an important conversation about men's rights and the problems in the legal system. Atul's case is a test for the Indian justice system. Will it give him the justice he wanted so badly? Or will it prove he was right to be cynical? In the days before his death, Atul was very methodical. He made a list of 32 tasks. He divided them into before last day and last day. Each task was a step closer to the end. He gathered documents, backed up his data, and even wrote goodbye messages. He didn't want to leave anything unfinished. His final act was a carefully planned exit from a world that had hurt him so much. Atul's careful planning shows how deep his despair was. It tells us how much pain he must have been in, the feeling of complete hopelessness that drove him to this. Atul's suicide is a wake-up call. It reminds us that men can also be victims of abuse and a failing system. His death shows the urgent need for legal reforms and a fairer society. We need a system that doesn't favor one gender over another. We must look again at laws like Section 498A to make sure they are not misused for extortion. We need to talk openly about men's rights and stop the stigma against male victims of abuse. Atul's case is a call to action. It's time to create a society where justice is fair, where everyone has an equal voice, and where no one suffers silently. Atul Subhash's death is a tragedy, but his story must not end here. We must remember him, remember his pain, remember his fight for justice. Let his death lead to change. Let us honor his memory by working towards a fairer and more just society. A society where the legal system protects everyone, no matter their gender. A society where Atul's story is never repeated. Atul's fight for justice is now our fight. Let's make sure his death was not in vain. Let's build a better world in his memory.